Hey guys, today we're going to go over some early American literature information. This is going to help you with your Unit 1 test, and it's also going to help you with our first short constructed response. So where and when did the Pilgrims land in the New World? Well, we all know that they did land, and they landed in Cape Cod, Massachusetts in 1620. Okay, it wasn't Columbus sailing the ocean blue in 1492, and they did not land in Savannah, Georgia. They landed in Cape Cod, Massachusetts in 1620. That information could be important to you later on. So why did the Pilgrims leave Europe to establish a colony in America? Well, everyone in England had to belong to the church. So there was a group of people called separatists, and they wanted to separate from the Church of England. They wanted to be able to practice their own religion. So the separatists, under the leadership of William Bradford, oh yes, we're going to talk more about him, decided to leave England and start a settlement of their own so that they could practice their religion freely. So they got on the Mayflower and they went to the New World. So what disease was wiping out the people in England during that time? Well, that was the plague. So who was the king of England that was giving the separatists all this trouble at the time? That was King James. So we know that the separatists left England in search of religious freedom. So the impact that the church had on this was that it was law that everyone in England had to belong to the church. They did not have separation of church and state like we do here in America. They said if you are a member of this country, then you have to belong to this church, and they didn't have a choice. And if you didn't, if you were a dissenter or a separatist and you did not want to belong to the Church of England, you disagreed with it, there were consequences. You were put in jail, you could be put to death. It was not pretty if you did not agree with the Church of England at that time. So, John Winthrop wrote a model of Christian charity, okay, and this is a sermon. So what is a sermon? Well, this is a talk on a religious or a moral subject. Especially, it's usually given at a church service, and there's usually some religious passage that it's based on from the Bible. All right, and so thinking about an author's purpose, all right, so authors write for many different reasons, and these reasons are all called the author's purpose. So depending on the purpose, the author may choose all different sorts of writing formats and genres and vernacular, and a simple trick to summarize the three main categories of an author's purpose is to use the acronym PI, which stands for Persuade, Inform, and Entertain. So what is the author's audience? Well, in writing, audience is who you are writing for. And if you know who you're writing for, you can make some good decisions about what information to include, as well as your tone and the language in conveying it. So you're not going to write the same way to a teacher who may be an audience as you might write to a friend who would be an audience. So you change the way you write, the things you say, how you say them, depending on who your audience is. So this is important as we're looking at a model of Christian charity by John Winthrop. So he was really focusing on audience appeal, and this is one reason writers choose a particular literary form, such as a sermon, as to appeal to their audience. Good writers define their purpose for writing, and they keep their audience in mind while they're writing. So Winthrop was absolutely no different from that. The purpose of a model for Christian charity is to clarify the expectations for the new settlement. Okay, so this sermon was a good choice for the Puritan audience because they were very religious and they would be familiar and comfortable with this format since much of their lives centered around worship. So here's an excerpt from the sermon. When God gives a special commission, he looks to have it strictly observed in every article. Thus stands the cause between God and us. We are entered into covenant with him for this work. Now if the Lord shall please to hear us and bring us in peace to the place we desire, then hath he ratified this covenant. So he's saying if we make it here safe, then we know we're doing what God wants us to do. And we'll expect a strict performance of the articles contained in it. All right, so he's like, okay, God, we made it here. That means God's happy. So, and that also means he wants you to follow the rules set forth in this covenant. All right, and so he goes on to say, we must delight in each other, make others' conditions our own, rejoice together, mourn together, labor and suffer together. He's using the repetition of the word together here. Always having before our eyes our commission and our community in the work, our community as members of the same body. So shall we keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. The Lord will be our God and delight to dwell among us as his own people, and will command a blessing upon us in all our ways, so that we shall see much more of his wisdom, power, goodness, and truth than formerly we have been acquainted with. So basically what Winthrop is saying here is that, hey, you follow these rules. We work together. We are nice to each other. We build this community. Then God is going to bless us. He's using first person point of view. He's using the word we and our. He's really trying to show them that, okay, we are all one entity. We're all one community, and we have to work together as one. And you can tell he's using first person point of view because he's using personal pronouns like we and our. So that's how we know. And he's doing that to really personalize it for these people to make sure they understand that they really are all one together. All right, and then he continues to say, follow the counsel of Micah, to do justly, to love mercy, to walk humbly with our God. For this end, we must be knit together in this work as one man. We must entertain each other in brotherly affection. We must be willing to abridge ourselves of our superfluities for the supply of others' necessities, always having before our eyes our commission and community in the work, our community as members of the same body. All right, so here he is using an allusion to the counsel of Micah. Well, what is an allusion? This is a brief or indirect reference to a person, place, or thing, or idea of historical, cultural, literary, or political significance. So this is a literary allusion here. All right, and it doesn't, when you use an allusion, you don't come out and say, the counsel of Micah, which is this, which was written about in this. No, you just say it and you just assume your audience knows what you're talking about. It's just a passing comment. And the writer expects the reader to possess enough knowledge to spot the allusion and grasp its importance in the text. And he chose this allusion because it is a religious allusion, and he knew that his listeners would know exactly what it is. So what does he want his listeners to do? Well, he wants them to pull together for the greater good of the community. He wants to put the community before their own needs and wants, and he wants them to be kind to one another and work together. So that's basically what he's talking about. And he also describes his listeners as a city upon a hill. So he says we must consider that we shall be as a city upon a hill. So he's comparing the community to the city upon a hill. All right, he says the eyes of all people are upon us, so that if we shall deal falsely with our God in this work we have undertaken, and so cause him to withdraw his present help from us, we shall be made a story and a byword through the world. So if we don't do what we're supposed to do, God's going to punish us, and we'll be an example to the rest of the world. We shall open the mouths of enemies to speak evil of the ways of God and all professors for God's sake. We shall shame the faces of many of God's worthy servants and cause their prayers to be turned into curses upon us, till we be consumed out of the good land whither we are going. So once again, we have to do this right, or we're going to be punished, we're going to be cursed. Okay, if you want to pay attention to Winthrop's diction, or his word choice here, the eyes of all people are upon us. He's really trying to convey how important what they're doing is. All right, and we shall be made a story and a byword through the world. So if we mess this up, everybody's going to know about it. So he's really trying to really let the listeners know how important their mission is of starting this new settlement in the New World. All right, so how did they even get there? Well, we have William Bradford here, and he was a founder and longtime governor of the Plymouth Colony Settlement. All right, he was born in England, and he came over with the separatists. He was kind of the leader of those separatists that left Europe and decided, you know what, we got to come on over to the New World. We want our religious freedom. He was among the passengers on the Mayflower, and he kept a journal, and it was later compiled in this volume called Of Plymouth Plantation. So what point of view does Bradford use, and how do we know it? And what effect does his use of point of view have on the reader? So let's just take a look. It says, after they had enjoyed fair winds and weather for a season, they were encountered many times with cross winds and met with many fierce storms. Some of the chief of the company, perceiving the mariners to fear the insufficiency of the ship as appeared by their mutterings, they entered into serious consultation with the master and other officers of the ship to consider in time of the danger, and rather to return than to cast themselves into desperate and inevitable peril. So he's talking, okay, there was some bad weather, the crew wasn't sure what to do, they had to turn around. So he's using third person point of view here, because we can see the words they. He's not saying our. right? He's really trying to, he's kind of telling it from that outside perspective. He's just describing what he sees. And so that really kind of lets the reader see exactly what was going on, but not necessarily from his direct point of view. So what is a journal? And basically this is what he kept the entire time, the voyage over, and then once they settled in the New World. And this is a daily record of news and events of a personal nature. It can also be called a diary. So why are they valuable? What can they be used for? Well, journals are a first-hand account of historic events. I mean, he is on the Mayflower, and you are getting a first-person account of what's happening. They also can provide different points of views of important happenings. So his journal might have been different from someone else's, maybe in a different, station on the boat. So he was the leader. So the way he saw things may be a little different than maybe one of the sailors on the boat saw something. And we're going to be kind of moving into that for our short constructed response. So a lot of early American writings are in the form of journals that describe the experience from the author's perspective. So what is perspective? Well, your perspective is the way you see something. If you think that toys corrupt children's mind, then from your perspective, a toy shop is an evil place. All right, so your perspective is how you see something. It's not necessarily everyone else's truth, and how everyone else sees something. It's how you see something. All right, guys, so that wraps up our first week. So make sure that you go ahead and watch any of the recordings for this week. If you have questions, email me or come to one of our sessions.